Are we rolling?
Yeah.
I'm Hannah. I'm a theatre producer. I've been producing for 8 years, and I do theatre productions and private commissions for people who want a bespoke theatre show in their lives. So that's what I do. I'm going to talk specifically about the theatre world because that's my area of expertise. So there's a lot of misconceptions about what a producer does and a lot of different types of producers. So I'm going to do my best to explain all of them. So you will have a lead, one type of producer is a lead producer. This is the type of producer I am. So another example of a lead producer is somebody like Cameron McIntosh or Andrew Lloyd Webber, who are both pretty famous theatre producers. And what the lead producer will do is the CEO role. So that will be like buying the rights, hiring the director, running the whole thing, being the boss. So they will often be called just the producer, or it's often, because now there's so many producers, they will often have the title of lead producer, so that everybody really knows that it was like they took the production from conception to what you go and book a ticket for in the West End, for example. So staying within the commercial theatre world, and when I say commercial, I mean like the West End, big UK touring productions, or like commercial immersive productions, i.e. productions that don't have government money behind them. Another type of producer would be like the exec producer. So this would be somebody usually in quite a senior role, but it doesn't necessarily correlate with age. They'll be somebody who will not actually do the work to take the production from conception to delivery, but they will probably be like, I don't know, liaising with a rights holder to get some intellectual property, and that will be the core idea behind the show. Perhaps they're going to put some seed money into the production. They're going to do some really top level strategy stuff at the beginning and during the production process, i.e. getting the show to the stage. They won't be doing the day-to-day, but they're going to be doing the strategy. So that's an executive producer. And often you will see an executive producer might be, for example, if the show is based on a particular book, or if it's based on the life of an actor. Like I know Tina Turner's one of the executive producers on the Tina Turner musical in the West End. And it's because like she's been working with the lead producer from the beginning to make sure that the story is the story she wants to tell. And she's probably put some money into the show as well. So that's an exec producer. An associate producer is a very, very broad term, but oftentimes it will incorporate a producer that's slightly more junior to the lead producer, who is going to be raising some money into the show. Perhaps they've got a group of investors that they can raise some money from into the show, and they'll be perhaps consulting on marketing and press. Associate producer credits are funny because it can be a role that can sometimes be an awful lot of work, like you're just essentially a more junior lead producer, or it can be somebody who has just funded the production. Co-producers. Now, co-producer is used a lot in America with investors in the show who want a producer credit, and this is a great way of raising money for your show if this is what you're wanting to do, is offering producer credits to investors and allowing them to sit in the room and work with you and advise with you when, for example, you're talking about who to cast or how to market the show. So oftentimes a co-producer, it might be a funder who you give a producer credit, or it might be, for example, a theatre venue who has offered you space or time or technical resources to make the show possible. So for example, a show I did last year, which was a new musical, our co-producer was the Lowry in Manchester, because they gave us money, rehearsal space, and advisory, like development advisory time from their team. Then we're talking about line producers. And these are people who are actually going to deliver the day-to-day of the production. So you could call them a line producer, or they're often called a general manager. And this is somebody who is going to do the administration, the payroll, liaising with the actors on a day-to-day basis, making sure rehearsals running on time, making sure rehearsal space is booked. Do the key investors have tickets for the opening night? All of this stuff that the lead producer probably doesn't really want to focus on, because as soon as the show's opening, they're looking at future opportunities for the production, keeping the investors updated, making sure that the show is being marketed correctly. And then to move from that to the subsidised sector, i.e. Places which have a lot of government funding. So this could be like the National Theatre, the Royal Shakespeare Company, these big institutions which are a huge part of the theatre sector in the country. The producers in those venues are like line producers. So they'll work with the venue or the organisation on delivering the production, but ultimately they are not going to be the people who set the overall cultural strategy of the venue. That will be the artistic director and the executive director and the board, and the producer will be a role where it will be a combination of line producing and business development. So they'll be delivering the shows and then also searching for further opportunities for a show. So for example, Chichester Festival Theatre do a production of a new musical, and then they're looking to partner with a commercial producer to take it to the West End. The producer within Chichester Festival Theatre will be like talking to all the different commercial producers. Which one do we want to partner with? What does that deal look like? Who gets what if it's successful? So, and then oftentimes there's producers who are really administrators. And this is something that I see a lot of job adverts for nowadays. It's like small to medium theatre companies who are looking for somebody to work with them on both administration and business development. And this is I think this is a bit of a tricky world, and I have come from this world, and this is what I did for many years as a freelancer. And the theatre company or artist will be wanting somebody to collaborate with to essentially make their company more financially sustainable and also do administration. And it's often a bit of a grey area as to who is responsible for what. Like, is it ultimately the artist's business and they're hiring the producer, or is it a collaboration, or is the producer hiring and developing the artist? And I think there's something I'm working on in my teaching and consultancy practice, is helping people who are at that beginner to intermediate level really understand the ins and outs of like rights, responsibility, contracts, and who does what, so that these micro businesses really can thrive and grow. Because so much of the problems that sector, that area of the sector, the emerging area of the sector faces, is actually lack of business knowledge. So that's something I'm working hard to change, and the consultancy services that I offer really tailor in on these specific issues for the SME theatre company or the SME theatre artist. So that's the whole gamut of what is a producer, and it's such an elastic term that can take on anything and everything. And there's a lot of people who started to use the term creative producer, which I think is a bit of an unnecessary qualifier, because I see producing as completely creative. Like, there's nothing more creative than being like, I think that I'm going to do this show and work with this writer, and I'm going to raise some money and find a theatre and we're going to put it on. Like, let's do it. You know, there's nothing more creative than that. But a lot of the more artistic side of the community, I think, see production really as like finance and administration, which, like, yes, those are two core components of what it is. However, there's the vision and the strategy side, which is extremely creative. So people use the term creative producer a lot now, which I personally think all producing is creative and we don't need that qualifier, but that's just one person's opinion. So yeah, that's an overview of all the different types of producers in the theatre sector. And it's a really exciting job. Let's talk about a scenario where all you have is a piece of paper with some writing on for the script. Oftentimes I've come into productions where there's perhaps been like a scratch version of the production that the writer's done themselves, and then I've come in and grown it and blown it up. But let's talk about like the genesis of a script. So the writer will have written something, and at that point the writer may have a director already attached to the project. It might be like one of their mates, or they might not. I will either read the script, know the writer, what are you writing next? And I'll be like, okay, this is good, I think this has potential. So at that point I would option the script or buy the rights for a period of time. So that would be a deal that I would do with the writer to say like, okay, I have an intent of producing this. Here's a deal, which means that I'm going to work on making this happen for a period of time. In return, you're not going to hawk this around to other producers, because of course, if I'm going to put my effort and energy into it, I would want to be the only person who's doing it. Otherwise, the entire enterprise is pointless if there's going to be like 5 producers working on it at the same time. So that deal will be done. That might be an easy deal. That might be a difficult negotiation. That completely depends on the circumstances. And then at that point, there would also probably be a bit of legal advice involved, because there'd be a contract. And then at that point, I might workshop the script. So that might be that we do a like relatively low cost reading of it with a couple of actors who are some friends, coming in on a couple of day rates to put it up, to see what it looks like, to see what it feels like. And at that point, the writer would likely be in the room, observing, watching, and at this point there may be script changes, because we figure out, you know what, this section, even though it read really well, it doesn't actually translate well in terms of how it's being delivered by the actors. So at this point, we'd also be getting a director involved to direct or work with the actors on the delivery of the workshop, and whether this director is the person who delivers the final production, that's a discussion. Ideally, if you're a smart producer, you want to get as many people, good people, locked in as early as possible and get them really passionate about the project, so that as things progress, you've already got that accrued knowledge and skill as to people who are familiar with the creative story that you're telling. So at that point, that's what we do. And perhaps at the end of that workshop period, we would invite investors or funders to come and watch whatever we'd done. This is one way of doing it. It could be that I raised some grant money to do the workshop production. It could be that I took the risk on the workshop production and funded it with, some kind of seed money or front money, or that entirely depends on the financial model I choose to use for the show. So at that point, you'll be like, okay, we've invited some investors in. Some of them might be interested in working with you, the producer, on this production. Some of them might not be. And when I say investors, I mean like some of them will be financial investors. Some of them might be theatres that you could use as partners to open the show. So obviously, if you're going to be taking a show to the West End, let's imagine, you don't really want to be opening straight into like the Dominion or the Adelphi, because that's a really high stakes situation. So ideally, you want to be doing a production of the show, perhaps in a regional venue first, so that you can have it in front of a live audience, work on it, and also get it into the muscle memory of the actors before you open in a really high stakes environment. Like that's, and most shows, particularly a musical, will do that. So they'll, in America, they'll do, Chicago or Boston first before they come to Broadway. And here they'll do like Chichester or Manchester or Birmingham first before they come to London. So at that point after the workshop, I would set the budget. Perhaps I pull in some associate producers. Perhaps there's an executive producer involved at this point. I've probably got a general manager who I already work with. I set the budget and then I raise the money. So at that point, I'll have got like a video of the workshop. I'll have got like a really nice pitch deck together, which involves quotes from the press for previous productions I've done, a biography of the writer, what they've done before, what the director's done before. Do we have any star casting names attached? Like they probably didn't do the workshop, but if we have somebody famous who's interested in being involved in the production, can we say like, yeah, if we raise the money, we know we're going to get X star who will sell tickets. So then money's raised. Once that's done, yeah, just raising the money, like that small thing, that is actually quite a lot of work. But then at that point, one would rehearse it, hire the actors, hire the stage management team, hire the production manager who will oversee the build of the set. If you're lucky, you'll be working with a theatre that has like a workshop where you can build the set in their workshop. If not, you'll have to go to an external contractor who who will make it up in Lancashire or something and then ship it down to London. And then you put it all together in the rehearsal room. You won't use the full set in the rehearsal room because that's a lot to put the set up in the rehearsal room and then in the theatre. So you'll use a rehearsal set, which will just be like the kind of idea of what the set will look like. To go back a step, I skipped a bit of a step. The director, once you're working with the director will hire out their creative team. So that they'll have a lighting designer, sound designer, set designer, costume designer, who they will think are the right people to work with for their particular vision for the show. And it will be a mutual decision between the director and the producer as to who gets hired. And then those people will like pitch this is what I think the set should look like. They'll make a little mock set, which will be like one of these little dollhouse sets. And then the production manager can look at that, spec it up, go, okay, it's going to cost X amount of money. And then that all goes into the raise and the budget. So all of this pre-production stuff happens kind of simultaneously. And that's really for the skill of the producer in that moment is really a combination of keeping control of everything because there's so many moving parts and also keeping momentum going. And then you rehearse, get everything into the theatre. You do some technical rehearsals where you like put the lights and the sound and the set and the actors all in the same place and you just run the show. And then you open. And and then audience come in to see the show in previews, and you might have anything between like a couple of days to a couple of weeks of previews. And previews are a moment where, yes, you have everything in the theatre and you have all the moving parts there, but also the director's going to be still watching the show and noting it, and you'll be making changes night after night. And it's been, some of the world's biggest shows have made massive changes in previews where they've got the audience in there and you've got, this entire musical number lengthens Act 1 so much that it's boring. We need to cut this musical number. And of course, everyone's like, what? We've just spent 3 weeks rehearsing that number. But it's like, it just doesn't work. And often you can only really get the sense of that once you're actually in the space. So some big changes might happen in previews, they might not. Then you open, and then perhaps you've done a couple of non-preview performances, and then you'll do press night, which is when you'll hopefully get the press in to see if they like it. And nowadays, of course, you're not just going to be getting print press in, you're going to be getting bloggers and vloggers and celebrities in to watch the show and post about it on social media, and really creating like a moment for the show so that it becomes desirable for other people to watch it. And all along this time when you've been opening the show, you've also been ramping up marketing and press, and there's been posters put up on the tube and adverts on Instagram and all of these things. And then you kind of open and hold on to your pants and hope that people come and watch it. And that's it, really. The producer is basically the CEO of the production. So you are hiring the actors, hiring the writer, hiring the director. You're raising money from investors or angels, and you're finding the venue. You're basically doing everything and nothing at the same time, because you're pulling all the elements of the production together and running it all and being in charge and making sure everyone else is doing their job. So often you'll be collaborating closely with a writer or a director, and you'll be like the core creative team, and from there you will hire out the production team and put the show on. So you'll be in charge of the press and marketing team. You'll be in charge of ticketing. It's like the equivalent, the theatre equivalent of being a CEO. You're the boss, and the buck stops with you. Well, I think the thing that I really like is the moments when it all comes together. Like I'm talking about the preview week or the opening night, and everything's come together. There's probably been some problems by this point, because there always is problems. Like every production, there's problems. So there's been like fires you've had to fight and whatnot. But then you get there and you get an audience in and you watch them react to it, hopefully positively. And it's just like being able to do magic, because you think, I thought of this perhaps a year ago when I was talking to the writer, and I was envisaging in my mind what it would look like and how the audience would react. And gosh, I was right. They love it, and this is wonderful, and they're crying and laughing and clapping and everything that I thought when I was reading the script is true. And that's amazing, because it's like having a magical power, because it's going from a dream. You really are doing we're going from a dream to making it real. And I don't think there's anything that's as thrilling as that. I think you have to be entrepreneurial. You have to think, you absolutely have to have can-do thinking, and you have to have a problem solving. You have to have both a left and a right brain. So you need to have the creative dreaming of the show on the stage and what it's going to look like and how the audience are going to react. And you also need to have the logical side of your brain that's like, okay, well, this is what the dream is. What are the steps that one actually takes to get it there? How much money do we need? Who do we need to hire? Which theatres do I need to contact? So you need to be able to do both of those things to equal capabilities. So you really need to be like, I think an all-rounder is a good term. Other qualities I see are you've got to be very determined, and you've got to you will inevitably be criticised, and you know, if you're the boss and running something, of course you're either the good guy or the bad guy, depending on how people see you. So you've got to be able to deal with. You've got to have a huge sense of responsibility and accountability as to when things are both going right and going wrong. And if people are criticising you, you have to be able to deal with that criticism in a professional way. So I guess you have to be a bit like, you've got to have a solid internal emotional compass that doesn't take things too personally. I think you've got to have vision. That's really important. You've got to be able to see both the 10-year goal, the 5-year goal, and like, what do I need to do tomorrow? And other qualities that make a great producer are interpersonal skills, and being able to communicate clearly and effectively with other people. Yeah, there's so many misconceptions, and I think the worst one is this image of like it's some like hey kid, I'm gonna like give you your big break, like this kind of old guy, like old fat guy, like smoking a cigar, being like yeah, and like those people don't really exist so much anymore. They they probably do in Hollywood, but it's actually the producer role is a far more active role than that. There's, as I've described to you, there's so much to do that often I find producers are very active, engaged people. I think the terrible misconception is the producer just like sits back in their office and counts up all the massive profits that they've made, which like only like 1 in 10 theatre productions will make any money. So it's kind of like one of, like 1 in 20 will be that unicorn production that is the next Hamilton, but the rest are probably going to fail and lose money. So it's an extremely risky business to be in. So the idea that there's this person who's like a kind of money bean counter Ebenezer Scrooge figure is really very insulting to me as a producer. So jobs in the industry that I aspire to that I haven't yet tried. Well, I think there's the fantasy side of this question, which is like, in another world, what would I love to do? And I would really love to be I'd love to be a deputy stage manager, who's the person who calls all of the cues of a show at any one given time. So they'll be the person with the microphone on and be like, okay, she's standing there, go lighting cue 3, and then this chord in the music plays, and you go sound cue 4, and like you call, like you are the person pressing the button to run the entire show, which I'm like, oh my God, that must be the most extraordinary adrenaline. Like, and imagine you're doing that, and it's like,
even most
even more
stressful. From like the production side, which is stressful enough, you've chosen one that surpasses that.
But imagine doing that, but it's like, Wicked, and you're like, go Q5, and it's like then the green set comes in and it all lights up. And that's like a fantasy. I mean, in terms of, as a serious question, is there anything else I would seriously consider doing instead of what I'm doing now? No, I know where I'm going, and I'm very happy with my path. Someone who's interested in getting into theatre, I would say the best advice, and I'm going to answer this as a general question, not Hannah, I want to be an actor, Hannah, I want to be a director. Getting into theatre, I would say start making now. So whether that's you're going to join your local amateur dramatics group and start directing, acting, producing, stage managing, or whether you're going to start to make videos on TikTok which showcase your creative ability. There are so many low-cost or no-cost ways of making. I would say start. You might mess up. I don't know what's going to happen. It might be brilliant. You might get picked up by Netflix like that. But make a start and explore. I would recommend doing that over going through any formal education program. Predominantly because I believe that the drama school and formal education system particularly in this, I can't comment on other countries, but in this country, in the UK, it's very out of date in my opinion. So I would say start hustling and just do it and see where it takes you. Yeah, so you can have a look at my website, which is hannahelsy.com. There'll be information about all the latest productions there. Follow me on social media at Hannah_Elsy on all platforms. And there's a couple of really exciting production announcements coming up soon. So please check out what I've got to offer there. I'm also delivering some masterclasses coming soon about producing and about how you can improve your producing skills. So head over to my website and check those out too. And looking forward to either entertaining with you or teaching you or engaging with you. It's all for you, the audience. So thank you so much for watching this video. There we go.
Cool. Cut.
Cut. Thanks, Benny.
I was thinking like